Welcome to Season 4, Fixing America. This is Episode 44, Fixing the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA. My bottom line is that the major offices and agencies that are part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, their policies and programs most of them are total failures. The U.S. Department of Agriculture no longer serves our food producers, and in that way is doing great damage to the stability of our food supply. For example, in 1970, there were 648,000 dairy farmers. By the end of 2026, they're expected to be about 18,000 dairy farms. So USDA policies have wiped out 97% of America's family-owned dairy farms. And they've done that through really bad policies. For example, our government, through the U.S. Department of Agriculture, sets the price of milk. Dairy farmers do not set the price for their own milk production. The government does that. And for decades, they have been setting the price of milk below what it costs to produce that milk, which has driven 97% of our family-owned dairy farms bankrupt. And in that way has done great damage not only to our rural communities, it has done great damage to our food supply. And it's not just dairy. From 2012 to 2022, we have lost over 208,000 cattle ranches for many of the same reasons, bad USDA policies. For example, there is no country of origin labeling on our beef. You do not know where your hamburger is coming from. There's no country of origin labeling. So you don't know where that cow came from, how healthy that cow was. All you know, if there's a USDA stamp on that package, it was processed. It was slaughtered and packaged in the United States. You have no idea where that cow is coming from. There's another issue related to why our cattle ranchers and beef farmers and ranchers are going bankrupt. And that is that there's so much USDA red tape involved in building even a small local meat processing facility that our beef farmers and dairy farmers sometimes are waiting 6 months to make an appointment out of state. So upstate New York dairy farmers have to wait 6 months to get an appointment, often in the state of Pennsylvania, to have their cows butchered and turned into the meat that many of us still want to eat. So that's another issue related to our food production. Our fisheries, our family-owned fisheries many among our coastal towns, are also dealing with horrible USDA policies. There's no policies that are helping our communities not be overfished. And at the same time, big business is using our national waters to take our resources, our fish, out of these waters without fair compensation. So, for meat, vegetables, fish, dairy products, the U.S. Department of Agriculture is failing our nation. So as part of these episodes, I like to go over what is the current strategic plan for that agency or department, and then talk about what plan might actually work. So let's take a look at the current USDA strategic plan. Goal number 1, This is the current plan. Goal number 1, combat climate change to support America's working lands, natural resources, and communities. No, no, no. That is not goal number 1. The essence of the Department of Agriculture is not to deal with climate change. It might have to, but that's not goal number 1. Wrong. Current goal number 2. Ensure America's agricultural system is equitable, resilient, and prosperous. Well, having lost 97% of our dairy farms, I would say not really prosperous. Definitely not equitable. And I don't like using words like resilient. What does that mean, resilient? Our farms, our fisheries, our ranches are failing because of bad policy. So they're certainly not resilient. So I'd say strategic goal number 2, bad. Current strategic goal number 3, foster an equitable and competitive marketplace for all agriculture producers. I don't know how that's different from goal number 2. I don't even know what it means. We're not competing. The U.S. Department of Agriculture is not enabling competition. It's enabling bankruptcy. Strategic goal number 4, provide all Americans safe, nutritious food. Well, there are at least 48 million Americans who are hungry enough that they are depending upon food assistance. And I think that number is an underestimate. I actually think it's more than that because of the way the measurement is taken. And food recalls have this year reached a 9-year high. So our food is not healthy. There's way too many chemicals and toxins in it. There are way too many chemicals and toxins in our soil and our water. So I'd say USDA is failing on that strategic goal. Current strategic goal number 5, expand opportunities for economic development and improve quality of life in rural and tribal communities. Not happening. I'm not even sure if economic development is actually a USDA goal, but it's not working. It's not happening. Goal number 6, attract, inspire, and retain an engaged and motivated workforce that's proud to represent the USDA. Okay, I might put retaining a competent workforce in that category I've been talking about, organizational excellence. But if they're not doing the right work, this goal is a failure too. And there's a list of, in addition to those problems, there's a list of serious problems with the current Farm Bill, the 2026 Farm Bill that's being proposed, that the Campaign for Children's Health has called for changes. Their big concern is that the current Farm Bill will provide a shield for the pesticide industry. So instead of reducing the pesticides and chemicals in our food, the current Farm Bill allows the food industry to do whatever they want with chemicals. There's no liability shield for pesticide manufacturers. Another issue that was raised is that the current Farm Bill takes away states' rights to regulate dangerous toxins. So local governments, based on this federal law, will no longer be able to enact local restrictions against the use of toxins and chemicals and pesticides. This would prevent local governments from protecting local water. For example, from PFAS, the forever chemicals that are being dumped into our water supply and our land. Another point that's raised by the Campaign for Children's Health that are subtle, and that's what's happening in a lot of legislation. There are these tiny little subtle policies that are so damaging and so destructive. So the 2026 Farm Bill pressures farmers of all sizes and promote the use of wireless technology for what's called precision agriculture. So not only is this an extra cost to small farmers, but it will mean more radio towers, and more of us exposed to electromagnetic radiation. And also, written in the 2026 Farm Bill, are pressures for farmers to produce detailed information about who works on their farm. And if they don't want to provide that personal information, they might not be able to sell their milk off the farm to processors. So, a lot of bad policy that's doing damage to our food supply. And the way I think about how to fix this, the solution for me is actually to go back to the original vision for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So the USDA was established in 1862 by President Abraham Lincoln in the middle of the Civil War, who wanted to make sure that America would support our farmers, guarantee a stable food supply, research ways to improve food production, and in some ways, research ways to improve food safety. So that was Abraham Lincoln's vision for what the U.S. Department of Agriculture should be doing. And I think we need to just go back to those 4 strategic goals. Support farmers, guarantee a stable food supply, research ways to improve food safety, including the government response to severe weather events, and 4, research ways to improve food safety. So if we're going to make that change, the question then becomes, what do we do with the budget? The current USDA budget is $234 billion, and about $150 billion of that goes for direct food assistance and nutrition assistance, because minimum wage doesn't allow families to eat healthy food, so we're compensating for corporations not delivering a livable wage. We, the American taxpayer, are compensating for that by providing food assistance and direct support for healthy food. So I don't necessarily want to go through every item in the budget, but I'll give you a few examples of things that I believe ought to change. One thing that needs to change is the bias across the U.S. Department of Agriculture towards industrial agriculture and not family farms, ranchers, and fisheries. The bias towards industrial agriculture, which is reflected, for example, in the USDA loan programs. So there is $1.6 billion in direct loans and $2 billion allocated to guarantee loans. And an unknown amount of that, I believe the vast majority of that money, goes to corporate loans to support industrial agriculture. Not needed. If they can't make their own money, why are we, the taxpayer, supporting industrial agriculture and their use of pesticides instead of supporting our family farmers, ranchers, and fisheries? There are other parts of the USDA that we need to look at carefully because I don't think they're doing the right job. What does soil conservation, the soil conservation agencies do? What do those programs do? There's an unacceptable amount of poisons and toxins and chemicals and pesticides in our soil. What are they doing? Are the scientists not capable? Are they being directed to do the wrong thing? It's just really hard to sort it out, but nothing's happening. There is no good outcome from that budget. In the same way, there's not enough review of imported plants, imported food products, imported animals. There are problems with invasive species because the U.S. Department of Agriculture agency that's supposed to do those investigations is not doing enough. Not clear if they're not competent or they're just being directed to not pay attention. So I do end each of these episodes with what I'm calling the Monday morning actions, and I have two. So the first Monday morning action is for those of us who eat, which is kind of everybody. And I'm asking you to look for local food. Go to your local farmers markets. Go to your local farms who often have farm stores on their land, on the farm, where you can buy healthier, cheaper, high quality food. Go to the farmers markets. Go to farm stores. When you go to your grocery store, look for what's local. And when you're buying milk, look for the red cap, whole milk, whole milk. And if you have problems digesting whole milk, look for what's called A2 milk, because those cows have been bred to not include the protein that makes milk difficult for some people to digest. And it's in the whole milk, it's in the fats that the proteins and all the vitamins and minerals that we all need, it's in the fat. And that's why it's important to drink whole milk. That's why it's delightful that the U.S. government has finally, after I think about 14 years, passed legislation that allows schools to serve whole milk, which they've not been allowed to do for many years. My second Monday morning action is for the new political leaders that are going to come into office in our midterm elections. I think there's going to be an enormous change. I think there's going to be a lot of people in government that might not have expansive experience. And I want our new political leaders at every level to hold local hearings with your food producers, the small farms and ranchers and fisheries. Listen to them directly so that you understand what policies need to change, exactly what policies. For example, how is the USDA setting the price of milk? What costs go into that? What costs need to be changed? So hold hearings. Listen to local farmers, ranchers, and fishers. And that's what I have to say about the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Thank you for listening.